and it destroys knowledge. Now, 6,000 years ago this all happened, according to him. That's about 200 generations since then. We have plenty of good observations through study that in humans you accrue roughly a new mutation per generation. So each of you in here can be happy that you're a mutant to some fair probability. Now, if you allow 200 generations, then we can allow the accumulation of 200 new mutations during that period of time. That would lead to 40,000 of your genes. Only 200 of them would show variability due to a new mutation. In fact, out of our 40,000 genes, 4,000 of them show genetic variability. How can you generate this consistent with his hypothesis? Well, again, you'd have to invent some ad hoc hypothesis. You'd have to say, well, for reasons unknown to us and without any evidence for it whatsoever and inconsistent with everything we know about current life, there was a rain of mutations that struck not just humans, but struck all other creatures as well. And then you think, oh, well, I've gotten myself out of that. Yes, I've got to imagine another absurdity, but fine, I'm out of the immediate bind. But it ain't that easy. Because if the individuals are accruing mutations rapidly over this short period of time, they all trace back to the ancestral group 6,000 years ago. So as we like to say, everything comes back as spokes on a wheel instead of trees where some individuals are more related to others and some groups are more related to others, some share more variance with some individuals than others. If you apply this to, well, there's a worse problem still, which I'll go over in 2 minutes' time. I don't want to introduce too much science into this revival meeting, but I want to introduce a little bit. The genetic code is redundant. That is, there's some codes that code for the same amino acid. So you can get a mutation from one code there to the other, still produces the same protein, still the identical same individual. We don't think natural selection acts on those genes or acts extremely weakly because it produces the same individual. Now those change over time due to random processes, and these have been studied in some depth in the lab, and they fit logic. And they start to diverge from each other solely because of random factors. Some individuals breed, some don't, and so some variants, which are coding for the same thing, become more frequent and others less frequent. They evolve by a random walk. Well, the interesting thing about random walks is that they tell time, because the longer the time for the walk, the further apart two originally identical molecules are going to become at these synonymous sites. Now, two things can be concluded from a world of data on these synonymous sites. First of all, they provide a congruent system of dating, which is congruent with the strata and the phylogeny. That's a very curious fact that didn't get explained by his fantasy about sorting by size during the flood. How is it that individuals that are further down show greater divergence due to random walk at these synonymous sites? And the second thing that's interesting about these data is if you are given an anchor point, that is one point in time in the past whose actual time you know, not relative time, but like it's, you dated from the methods I was telling you, geological clocks, you say it's 200 million years. Then you can use all of the data on synonymous sites since then to give exact times to the splits of other species. And you can check them both against the geological record and against the timing. And once again, it's congruent. I'm thinking of forming an organization called Liars for Jesus. I'm willing to lie for my Lord. That's right. I'm willing to lie for Jesus. I'm willing to pillory people whose work I do not study or understand. I'm willing to make a fraudulent challenge, my $250,000 challenge. I'm willing to make just flat assertions about what's known or what isn't known in a vast scientific enterprise that's occupied the serious attention of serious people, over hundreds of thousands of them, up to 1 million scientists working on this over the years. And I hope Mr. Hovind will be honorary president of the organization, that maybe I can find a role in it for Mr. Guarnieri as well. I just want to end by saying that one of the most disturbing aspects of this and a sense of the orientation of many of you is that I regard the religion that's being pushed as being almost as bad as the anti-science. I think he's giving you a double bad deal. He ain't giving you no science, and he's misrepresenting that. And the religion he's selling you, to me, is infantile. It's arrogant and blasphemous to tell God how creation occurred, how God created this earth. How dare he? And reducing God to an anthropocentric midget, the organism that created this vast universe, is just this trivial creature running things for the benefit of humans and a particular group of humans right now. I think it's pathetic. Jesus warned against those who would come in his name as false prophets, who would come crying in his name, and he said, beware of them. Judge them by their fruits, he said. And what are the fruits of this man's work? Misrepresentation, lies, and an absurd fantasy of a flood based on a hellish vision of what the Creator is really like. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, I stick by my guns. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can in a moment, but the evidence that is used to support the evolution theory is indeed lies and has been proven wrong. For example, your textbook will tell you that the appendix is vestigial. You don't need it anymore. That's a lie, been proven wrong years ago. The appendix is part of your immune system. If your appendix is taken out, you can still live. There's no question about that. You can live without both your legs and both your arms and both your eyes also. It doesn't prove you don't need it. The appendix, well, I got the wrong remote. Here's the problem. The appendix is part of the immune system. Anybody that studies biology or anatomy should understand that. So there we go. You take your appendix out, you got a better chance of getting quite a few diseases. Sometimes that's the best option, but the appendix is not vestigial. That should not be used as evidence for evolution. This textbook says the whale has a vestigial pelvis. Many organisms retain traces of their evolutionary history. For example, the whale retains pelvic and leg bones as useless vestiges. The National Center for Science Education in Berkeley, this little storefront building, says that Bossy evolved a blowhole. This is how whales evolved, according to the National Center, whose whole purpose is to keep creation out of schools, to defend the teaching of evolution against sectarian attack. This was started by Andrew Carnegie with a grant because he loved the evolution theory and gave a bunch of money to support the evolution theory in schools. This textbook again says the whale has a pelvis right here. The whales have a pelvis, vestigial pelvis, that serve no purpose. Whales have